Welcome, everyone, to Ecopsychology Voices, an interview series with some of ecopsychology's luminaries. Hello, my name's Carol Cozio, and I co-created this series along with Linda Bazell. Linda is an ecotherapist, author, ecopsychology editor, and permaculturalist. Today, Linda will be in conversation with UK-based social permaculturalist, Looby Macnamara. Thank you, Linda and Looby, for sharing your time and wisdom today. And Linda, the airwaves are yours.
Thanks, Carol. I am so excited to be having this conversation with Looby because ever since I took my permaculture design certificate, I have been really puzzling over why the wonderful ethics and principles weren't being applied more in the people care area and the psychological area and the community area. So here is Looby's wonderful book that I want to really put up there for everybody to know about. It's called People and Permaculture, Caring and Designing for Ourselves, Each Other, and the Planet. So Looby is really a pioneer in terms of taking all of the good things about permaculture and really translating them into these people care and fair shares areas that somehow haven't gotten much notice. She's a pioneer of personal and social permaculture, which has now evolved into what she calls the Cultural Emergence toolkit, which I'm definitely going to learn about. Looby lives with her family on 20 acres in the UK, which is run as an education and demonstration center called Applewood Permaculture Center. She is part of the Mother Nature Project, which I also want to learn about, supporting mothers on their personal transformation journey. So I wanted to start out, Looby, by asking this question that's been bugging me for over a decade. Why has permaculture been so slow to apply the ethics and the principles to people care, both community care and care of what's going on in here?
Well, it was a question I asked myself actually for quite a while, and was imagining that someone would write a book. I noticed the niche was there, and for a while I was thinking, well, I can't write the book on people care because I need to be this perfect person before I do that. And then I eventually realized what a limiting belief that was, and reframed that into I'll learn more about people care in the process. So I think that people were applying it, but it wasn't in the literature. So I think for many people, when they did their permaculture design course, came across permaculture, it was what happened in here that really was the light bulb for them, that really shifted what happened next in their lives, beyond what happened in their garden. But that wasn't necessarily talked about or written about. So there was a lot of reinventing the wheel of, well, how do I actually do designs for people-based systems? How do I use it in my own life? So when I started interviewing people for the book, there was a lot of people who were like, oh yes, I've used this principle, or I do this, and I surfaced a lot of wisdom and a lot of individual application of the principles. It just hadn't been explicit for a long time, and it was kind of under the radar with teachers, with the literature, with the sort of external viewpoint as well. And so for me, it was really like, recognizing how much permaculture had given me and given other people, how much like vibrancy in our lives that permaculture offered us, and wanting to share that widely. And then the other realization was that actually any project, any earth care project, the success or failure all comes down to people. in the end, whether that's your own backyard and whether you've got the motivation or the confidence to garden, or whether that's on a like international protecting rivers scale, or you know, protecting the oceans. It's all comes down to people in the end. In the beginning, in the middle, I think that and so we really need to pay attention to the people care in order to make the earth care happen. Yes,
exactly. That just seems so important. Somebody emailed in a question where they were trying to say, well, what if I take my normal permaculture design certificate, where can I get the training, the additional training? Is there a PDC for people care that I could take?
Yeah, I think this is also one of the challenges, going back to your first question of why it isn't more widely there, is because permaculture has grown so much that what we can fit into a 2-week course isn't enough. So we have to make some decisions. Do we teach about agroforestry or communication? And unfortunately that happens, those choices. We can't kind of fit everything into a 2-week experience, and unfortunately there is a shift in or prioritizing of the earth care within the permaculture design course. And so that's and I often say, what would happen if where would the permaculture movement be nowadays if the fair shares ethic had its fair share of the PDC?
That's a good question.
It would be somewhere very different, I think. If we'd given it a third of the course to each ethic, it would be in a very different place, I think.
That's a great recommendation. I hope a lot of permaculture people are listening.
Yeah, and unfortunately we have got this this pattern of this 90-hour PDC, which doesn't cover it all. And so this was part of the motivation for developing the Cultural Emergence toolkit, was seeing, okay, where do we take this forward? And so, you know, my work's moved from permaculture into people permaculture, and I just got up when you were showing my book because I thought I'd show everyone. This is the second edition, which just came out this month, so I thought I'd just not this year. It came out a few months ago this year.
Yeah.
And we've got a new strap line as well, which is designing personal, collective and planetary well-being.
Nice.
So that's really what we're looking at with people and permaculture: personal, collective and planetary. And so my pathway has gone from permaculture into people permaculture, which I think of as social and personal permaculture. So
right.
Social permaculture tends to we think of just groups of people and don't necessarily turn the attention internally. So I think personal permaculture as well. And then taking that forward into cultural emergence. So the idea of cultural emergence is that it is a toolkit that people can come and learn in stages, the different aspects of it. They don't necessarily have to have done a permaculture design course, although they might do that before or after. And that is like modules that build on each other. Maybe I could share my screen actually and just show here. This is a mandala I've done which shows the different modules of the Cultural Emergence toolkit. So this is a way of kind of creating a curriculum. That was the question: is there a curriculum for this, and not for people and permaculture? So it's evolved and kind of renaming into Cultural Emergence. So we've got the Activating Cultural Emergence course, which awakens us to possibilities and invites us to think into systems thinking and awareness of culture. And then we've got the Seed course, the Cultural Emergence Effective Design course, which is looking at how we manifest our goals and taking us forward, moving and invigorating us and designing our way forwards using the design web. And then we've got the Peace course, which is Peace, Empowerment and Cultural Emergence, and looking at how the nature connection and nourishing relationships and collaboration and the deep nature connection, which this has also evolved from a collaboration. I'll stop the share thing now. From a collaboration with John Young of the Eight Shields Institute, and looking at how we repair culture, how we look at indigenous cultures for wisdom and village building and connecting us up. So it's taking it forward, partly moving it, developing something new, and partly moving away from the myth of permaculture is just about gardening, and then social permaculture is about gardening with other people. So that's what I'm developing as a kind of continuum from permaculture, in answer to the question of is there curriculum? Right. Yes, that's what I'm developing. Yeah.
Great.
And just while I'm talking about courses, I'm sure we'll come back to this at the end, but just in case I forget, then there is a free online taster course, or donate if you'd like to, and we'll send a link with that so people can get an idea of that. Start their learning with Cultural Emergence. Yeah.
So is this something that can apply to sort of our internal lives as well as our community lives?
Indeed, yes, and this is one of the kind of the awakenings that people have when we think of culture. It's generally something out there. Mm-hmm. You know, it might be something big like the country we belong to or something. But actually, if we think of culture as a complex web of unseen and seen patterns of thinking and behaving and interacting. And it's our values, it's our priorities, all of those things. Actually, we all have a unique culture. We all have this unique web of how we interact in the world and patterns of behaving and thinking. And that can be very different, where it's even within family members, because we're all part of different macro cultures as well. So I'm part of the macro culture being a woman, and my partner's part of the macro culture being a man, and my teenager part of the teenage culture, and my youngest part of the child culture. So we're all living together, but we all have our own unique personal culture, and this is really the place to start. This is where our unique culture comes from all these different cultures that we're part of, and when we change something within us, it ripples out. So we can actually start emerging new cultures from paying attention to our own personal culture, and then that will send out ripples. And that's a really empowering thought in these days when we're getting so much information coming at us, and so much fear and disempowerment, actually, to really sort of say, well, hey, I have my own personal culture. I can pay attention to that, and I can change it and adapt it and make it more resilient, and name it and create the personal culture that I wish in the world. And knowing that will ripple out, it is very empowering.
Right. And tell me something about what you said. You're working with the Mother Nature Project, and you have a deck of cards that you're evolving? I was really curious to learn more about that.
Yes, so this was a collaborative funded project where it's a 2-year project that we're nearly at the end of, and we are producing a card deck. I think people are proofreading it at the moment, so it will be launched in the next few months. And it's really looking at how we shift the culture of awareness of this process of motherhood. So rather than at the moment, most of the literature is all about how do you as a mum look after your baby, and it really ignores this whole rite of passage that we go through where when we become mothers, that is transformative, that entirely shifts our own personal culture. We're talking of patterns of interacting and behaving and thinking. All that we had before becoming a mum shifts. Our patterns of sleeping, eating, driving, all of these things really shift when we become mothers. And it's kind of an unrecognized process. And so the Mother Nature project is really looking at how to support people through that process and how to name the challenges that they go through, how to reframe them, how we nourish ourselves, looking at the mother's journey that we go through, and then also as well how we nourish ourselves through nature connection as well. So those are the parts of the elements of that, and we brought Cultural Emergence into that, as well as permaculture and vision quests and art therapy and lots of different collaborative processes. And it's really been a very nourishing process as well. It's been a European project, so we have lots of online meetings like this, but we've really embedded that support, the support that you can get through this collaborative community. We've really embedded that into our work ethic and into our group processes. That really has, I think, shines through in the card deck and the principles that we've done. So we've looked at what are the principles for mothering as well. So to look at that. So yeah, it's been a really lovely process, and just again, like looking at branching out from the usual suspects of who we might get on permaculture courses, which I know is still very broad, but looking at wider demographics and looking at mothers. And yeah,
some women within the wider permaculture world have worried that there are really gender issues at play in how we have so focused on, using the big earth movers, the big sort of macho parts of permaculture, and had neglected some of these other parts. And it sounds like you're bringing some of those to the fore, where, like you say, mother issues or perhaps other issues that could be of special interest to women might be more incorporated. Does that feel like a fair criticism to you that some women are making, or not?
I think when we look at the permaculture movement, it's quite a mosaic, global movement, and in each country it has its own microculture. Then that is obviously it's contained within the bigger macro culture of what's happening in society. So they're in their country. So the permaculture movement in the UK is very different from the permaculture movement in Canada or USA or Nepal, where my partner works. And they're all, every person that's in that permaculture movement in that country is also part of the bigger culture there. So the dynamics come, the bigger dynamics that are at play come into the picture, and we still live in all around the world, to a greater or lesser extent, it's still a patriarchy, and it's still gives more emphasis to the contributions of men, and so that comes through when into the permaculture movement and how that is displayed. I think also as well, we can fall into a bit of a trap of actually reinforcing the invisibilization of women by saying that, by repeating that narrative that women's voices aren't heard, and that women aren't teachers, and that women aren't writers. And it's like, but hold on, how about me? You know, and how about, you know, you, and how about all these other people? And so we can, while we're trying to highlight the problem, we can actually exacerbate the problem. So we're trying to say, oh, actually women aren't getting enough voice. What that can do is actually deny the voices that are there, and make us feel like, oh, well, yes, I am a woman teacher, but I'm not enough. I'm still, you know, so we can play into the narrative and actually reinforce it rather than breaking it down. So I'd actually like to say there's plenty of women within permaculture that are getting a voice, that are being heard, and that is more happening more and more. And I hope it will continue to grow, and we are getting recognition. Yeah.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. So talk to me a little bit about zone 00. You know, in permaculture, we have this idea of the zones in terms of where we plant things in relation to the house or where we live, and we go out to the different zones. And I think it's the home itself is considered zone 0. And some people have talked about the idea of zone 00 as being what you're talking about, right? The internal culture and the internal emotions, our spirit, what we carry around with us.
Yeah, and our bodies as well, our physical health. So it's the place we visit most often. We're here all the time, in our thoughts, in our mind and body and spirit. And so it's also the place of most influence. So if we think of zoning, it's like we put the things that we want to influence least furthest away, and the things that we need to influence most by taking care of them, like the plants that need watering every day, need to come close. And ourselves, our own thoughts, our own body and mind are the place of most influence. So we have, you know, when we think of the world at the moment, there's so many things that are out of our sphere of influence. We think about the circles of influence and concern of Stephen Covey. We've got so many concerns. We could get concerned about the ice caps, about fracking, about our teenage children, you know, all sorts of things that are in the circle of concern, but we can't influence them. And the more we spend our time in the circle of concern, the less we spend in the circle of influence. So actually then our circle of influence shrinks. If we spend our time in our circle of influence, what can I change today? What can I change about how I am in the world? Then when we start to change those things, then actually our circle of influence grows and ripples out. And when that happens, we don't know where that will take us. And this is the quality of emergence in cultural emergence, is that unpredictable, unexpected things can happen when we really show up. So when we show up in ourselves, then we discover gifts that we didn't know we had. We can make changes, we can feel empowered, we can find our voices, we can discover our own health and happiness. And when we do that, that will have a ripple effect out.
I just have one last question here. I wondered if you could take one of the permaculture principles and talk about how we can apply that in this new way to people care, in addition to what we might do with it in our garden or our farm.
I think of the observe and interact is one of the principles that's most useful for us for ourselves when we're observing our own thoughts, our own feelings, and to actually interact with them. Okay, what do I need at the moment? Or in our relationships, what's happening here? And then the next step is interacting. It's that idea of like when we see kids playing or something, can we see, oh, there's an accident waiting to happen there, and it's like, okay, actually, can I interact and change something so that accident is less likely to happen? So it's the interacting that's really significant there, as well as the observing. Right. So how do we observe what's happening when we're talking to someone? Like, what's their body language? Are they open? Do they need to sit down? Do they are they being responsive to what they're hearing, what they're saying? Am I listening? Am I observed myself? Am I actually focused and paying attention here? And the same if we're observing ourselves at our work desks. Am I observed? Am I being focused and effective here? If I'm not, then can I interact with that, do something different, or bring my focus here? So I find that principle really useful for my being effective as well. Yeah, and we're part of the Cultural Emergence toolkit is also to have we have a whole set of cultural emergence principles as well. And one of them that I really I enjoy all of them, but one of them that I really enjoy is use the intelligence of cooperating hearts. And to really see that in our relationships, when we come together and we come together with the culture of cooperation, and we come with our heart intelligence and our openness, there is there becomes a collective intelligence there that will find solutions and co-create better, more effective solutions that meet everyone's needs in a way that if we're just thinking with our heads, we might not get to those kind of deep resolutions.
Oh, thank you so much. This is really important and wonderful work. So thank you for spending the time with us.
You're very welcome. It's been enjoyable.